Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's record review. Normally I talk about new music, but I'm going to be going on vacation, so I am pre-recording some videos just for you. Just some random thoughts about things that I like or care about. It's going to be a long time, so I shouldn't leave you without some dope thoughts to sleeve to. So I want to talk to you about what I think is the most underrated Beatles album, Yellow Submarine. Now, Magical Mystery Tour is very close to being almost as underrated as Yellow Submarine, except Magical Mystery Tour is at least usually rated. It's at least usually put in the tier lists. I get the feeling, and I've seen it quite often, that Yellow Submarine is not even rated as a Beatles album. It's seen as a half compilation, half soundtrack that has nothing to do with the Beatles, much like a lot of people have a feeling that the movie has nothing to do with the Beatles. So I will talk briefly about the movie at the end of this video. It is one of my top 5 movies of all time, period. And it has been since I was a baby, and it was literally the first movie I ever saw. I think it's an important movie as a father. I think it is one of the few things that has been given to us as parents where we can make sure that our children have taste by showing them a movie like Yellow Submarine. But I want to talk about the soundtrack, and I want to start by making a terrible admission. I underrated this album. My father passed a couple months ago. He loved Yellow Submarine. I think I've been thinking about that a lot because of that. This is my copy of Yellow Submarine, the tape. Okay, this is a cassette tape. And if you don't know, when you see all of the tape on one side, so this means that's side 1, and there's no tape left over here. That means I've listened to all of side 1 and none of side 2. This is exactly how I found it while clearing out my dad's basement. Which means I have not listened at all to side 2. And when I used to listen to this tape, I would listen to side 1, and then I would rewind it and listen to side 1 again. I never listened to George Martin's score. I loved the movie, I loved the music, but I was too young, I was too, frankly, ignorant to fully appreciate how great George Martin's score was. My brothers would tell me all the time, Skye, you gotta listen to the score as well, but I didn't listen. So over the past couple years, I've remedied that, and I listened to the entire album in its entirety, and I want to talk about this backwards. I want to start by talking about side B, the almost never listened to score by George Martin. There's a stupid thing where people talk about George Martin being the 5th Beatle. But he's more important than being a 5th Beatle. Like, if there were a 5th Beatle, like, George Martin is probably more important than any single one of the Beatles is to the Beatles. I mean, that's how important he is. As their producer, as someone who helped them achieve their goals, who gave them some continuity, who had vision and stability, it's an insult to just call him the 5th Beatle. That's how important George Martin was. And this beautiful score was the Beatles' chance to allow him to show off what he can do. Because part of what made him such a great producer for the Beatles is rock and roll wasn't his bag, baby. It just wasn't. That wasn't his thing. He wasn't a rock and roller. He was an old man. He was probably like 10 years younger than I am right now. But at the time, he was an old man, you know? So this is great because it shows his ability to write. But also, it shows his love of the Beatles catalog, the way he weaves in some Beatles melodies, the way he makes something that is so light, but at the same time menacing. The movie itself is filled with many scary moments, but also many comedy moments. So I want to go through briefly, track by track, George Martin's score as it exists on versions of the soundtrack that you can find. Obviously, it starts off with Pepperland, the gorgeous melody that is the melody of the movie. Da 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 da. It's even better than that. Matter of fact, you should listen to it. Click above the blue mini, above the Yellow Submarine, your blueness, to hear the song if you haven't heard it. It's just such a gorgeous melody, especially now for a summer day. I'm probably in Novi Sad in Serbia right now. Maybe I'm in Hungary or Vienna or France or somewhere. But I can imagine myself sitting out, looking at the Danube or looking at the Mediterranean in Marseille and having this soundtrack on in the back. But it's not just that it's a beautiful melody. It's also the way he orchestrates everything. I mean, the French horn that is on here. With soundtracks, French horn has been so beautifully used by John Williams. But John Williams doesn't use French horn for its sensibility, for its sensitivity. You know, like if you listen to the way Mozart hated the French horn, but his French horn concerto was just gorgeous, even though he hated his hornist, a guy named Gottlieb. He used to make fun of him all the time. They would fight all the time. It's funny stories. Gottlieb, maybe? Something like that. But, like, Mozart, obviously, I'm not comparing Martin to Mozart, but I am a little bit, in their ability to get such sensitivity out of French horn. Because when you think about French horn and soundtracks, you think of John Williams everywhere. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It doesn't have to be bombast. It can be sweet. And the way it kind of gets answered by the woodwinds all the way throughout. This beautiful melody sets us up, leads us into the next song, first of the Sea, I guess, trilogy, Sea of Time. Here it's cool because there's like a sitar in the back, and then strings are playing what would be a sitar melody. And it makes you wonder, like, maybe the sitar stuff wasn't all George. Maybe the sitar stuff was also Martin, George Martin. Maybe it's both Georges. You know, a little integration of the melody from Within Without You off of Sgt. Pepper's, but then also this beautiful romantic bit, some bit with drums and flute, and then like a very romantic bit. He's able to write these just soaring melodies that are just so agreeable to listen to. Sea of Holes is where things get a little bit more discordant. These descending notes, the feel of falling, these menacing backward sounds, discordant xylophones, leading to Sea of Monsters, which is, I guess, George Martin's closest thing to psychedelia when he's not working with the Beatles. Kind of like funk guitar, like it seems like it's a funk guitar on a wah-wah maybe, paired up with a xylophone and then answered by an oboe. It's wild instrumentation. I mean, I get it, you know, he had short white hair and he's a very serious man. He spoke with that kind of London accent that I can't impersonate. He didn't sound at all like the Beatles, but he gets pretty far out there. Just gorgeous, gorgeous processional bit. It sort of reminds you of like some kind of Vivaldi thing and it like falls apart. And it's maybe even some like Moog synthesizers in there. March of the Meanies has the very menacing vibraphone. Boom, boom, boogadoom, boom, boogadoom, boom. This actually reminds me strongly of Bernard Herrmann, Hitchcock's primary composer, as you know, Citizen Kane as well, did a lot of movies, but has that kind of feel, and will remind you probably strongly of John Williams, who, of course, was still a baby at this point, or in his early 20s. Pepperland Laid Waste is the sort of saddest track with most discord and sadness, although these little flutes come through to offer a little bit of happiness, really low bass, exciting hits at the end, and then we get to Yellow Submarine and Pepperland. And this is the perfect introduction, the perfect like segue between one side and the other, because of course the other side of the tape is Yellow Submarine. So if you were to listen to this properly, not like an ignorant 12-year-old Professor Skye, you would get to the end of Yellow Submarine and Pepperland and then flip over the tape and press play, and then the first words would be, "In the dawn where I was born." You'd get to Yellow Submarine, right? So it's this great restatement of the main theme. It almost turns it into like a Aaron Coplandish style theme, all sorts of instrumentation. He's just having fun with this melody and really driving it home. So, okay, what about the rest? What about the Beatles part? What about the part I did listen to? I owned the Yellow Submarine soundtrack, or I had it in my possession. It's not like I bought it. I was a kid. Way before I had Revolver. So I can't believe that Yellow Submarine was ever on a different album. I didn't understand that it wasn't written for the movie. You know, I was a kid, you know. But I really enjoy how the movie recontextualizes the song and how it sort of makes the party, because the Yellow Submarine is a great party movie. It's a great communal feeling. It's about friendship. It's about togetherness. It's about love. It's about the power of art versus the power of sort of utilitarian fascism. It's all these great things all wrapped up in one. And by becoming the center of the movie, it takes a song which often people marginalize and puts it up front. Now, I should say I have a ridiculous attachment to the song. My mother used to sing it to me when I was a baby. I sang the song at my own wedding, like guitar and everything, with my kids playing next to me. So, I mean, I really like the song. I have a very close connection to it. But I love how it's not, okay, it's on Revolver, but not really. It's the anchor point for the Yellow Submarine soundtrack. And then Only a Northern Song. What I love about the Yellow Submarine soundtrack is, you know, where it is in the Beatles discography, it's mostly just throwaway songs, right? They're just like, oh, whatever, put this random garbage that I wrote in on the back of an envelope. Don't put it on a real album, put it on the soundtrack to that guy's movie. You know, Thank you. But what I love is that, Only a Northern Song. So that was the name of their publishing company. And a little bit of the bitterness of George is starting to come through just with that title. Hey, trivia. What Beatles songs don't have guitar? Eleanor Rigby, Eleanor Rigby, Eleanor Rigby. Congratulations. Of course, Eleanor Rigby doesn't have guitar. So what? It's written by a bass player. Only a Northern Song doesn't have any guitar, written by the lead guitarist. Did you notice that doesn't have any guitar? Do you know when I noticed that? This morning when I was preparing this video. It's these dirty synthesizers just, and the whole thing, the Beatles get a lot of credit for making psychedelic music. And, I Am the Walrus and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. But, this might be the trippiest Beatles song there is. Because the lyrics, it's not like Semolina Pilchard waiting for the van to come or picture yourself on a boat in a river. He's talking to you, man. Like, I remember listening to this song on tape. I've never done any psychedelics, never done any hallucinogens. But I remember listening to this song at night with my headphones on. When you're listening late at night, you may think the band aren't quite right, but they are. They just play it like that. And there's like so much slightly behind discordant sounds. The chords are going wrong. We just wrote it like that. All these just crazy horns all over the place. You feel uncomfortable. It makes you sick in a good, cool, trippy way. Organ and bass, Paul is just... Seriously, you're a bass fan? Obviously, if you play bass, Paul McCartney is one of the greatest bass players that ever lived. He had so much taste, so much ability to write, just such melodic and strong while still being rhythmic bass lines. Listen to it here. And the lyrics are totally matching it. It's a completely meta song. It's a postmodern song, okay? It's a postmodern song. It's just a Beatles song. That's all you're listening to. That's just it. We just wrote it like that. You think it's wrong? It's not wrong. We just wrote it like that. And things get a little bit behind. To me, Sgt. Pepper's is great. I personally think it's the most overrated Beatles album. Hey, it's still a 9 out of 10, but I think it's the most overrated Beatles album. But the psychedelic promise, in my opinion, of Sgt. Pepper's is actually realized with this song. I mean, it ends with like this psychedelic march. And if you've seen the movie, this is the part where they have the sound waves and the pictures of the band. And it's just very well linked, because the movie is a great story. It's a fun children's movie. And it's a great musical with great little music videos. And this just works so well. So here we are. We're totally far off into a whole nother universe of psychedelia and weirdness. And then all together now. Hey, Beatles fans, what late Beatles songs show true collaboration by John and Paul? I hear you typing. I hear it. A Day in the Life. What if A Day in the Life was a goofy song for kids? All together now, okay? They are so in sync together. It's just two chords, G, 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 G. D, 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 right? I think that's what it is. And it's just so silly, and A, B, C, D. I think there's even a ukulele in there. But here we really have them working together, all singing together. If you've seen the movie, this is the song where the Beatles appear at the end of the movie, live and in the flesh, goofing around, being told what to say because they haven't seen the movie and they don't actually care about the movie, which doesn't matter. They're having this sense of fun and togetherness. Hey, Beatles fans, what late Beatles songs make you just smile? Okay? I mean, I guess, Get Back, I guess. But still, all the bitterness in there. I don't know. There's not a lot of Beatles songs in the end that make me feel like these are friends making music together. And that's how I feel with All Together Now. Plus, it's a children's movie, and it's a children's song, and it's a good one. Notice how the Yellow Submarine soundtrack is very low on Paul content. Hey Bulldog, this is the one where even if you didn't care about this soundtrack, this was the one. This is for hipsters, Hey, what's your favorite Beatles song? I'd say Rain or Hey Bulldog. Oh yeah, yeah. Or maybe that's a B side. Yeah, you wouldn't know that one. Yeah, no, that's actually on the soundtrack. Yeah, yeah, you wouldn't know that one. I would say "Hey Bulldog" is the second most badass Beatles song after "Helter Skelter." Just this crazy riff. Once you have a piano in front of you and you learn how to play this riff, you're done. The rest of your life, when you see a piano, and the other thing is that it announces a couple of things with John's solo writing. The same way that only a Northern Song, I believe, shows off some of George's bitterness that's going to come around and really become the center of a lot of his music. Like, John's lyrics here, some kind of happiness is measured out in miles. What makes you think you're something special when you smile? This, to me, is announcing a song like Everybody Loves You. Everybody is hollering about their own birthday. Everybody loves you when you're 6 foot in the ground, you know? That like nobody loves you when you're old and gray. Nobody needs you when you're upside down. Like you're going to be left alone. Everyone's hollering about their own birthday, you know? Like he's really focusing on this idea in both of these songs that people's happiness becomes the center of their life. And when other people's happiness becomes the center of their life, they don't care about you. They're hollering about their own birthday. What makes you think you're something special when you smile? Hey, John, aren't you a hippie, man? Free bed piece, man. Plastic Ono. What the hell is this? Smile. Isn't the thing that... Right? Isn't that what you're trying to get the glove to do in the movie? I love it. I love the darkness. Now, the funny thing was, this song wasn't even in the movie. The first 100 times I saw the movie, it's only added in more recent versions. I suggest the Blu-ray; it's quite good. But this shows the other side of John as well, because there is an emphatic call to togetherness. You can talk to me. If you're lonely, you can talk to me. So here, John is putting down happy people and lifting up sad people. It's all too much. Even though this is just an EP, so in theory, the George rules, if he gets 2 songs per album, in theory, he'd only get 1. Maybe they cared so little, they gave him 2. I think All Too Much, yeah, okay, it's not one of my top 10 favorite Beatles songs because I have 50 top 10 Beatles songs, okay? But it's my 51st top 10 favorite Beatles song. It is so good. This wailing guitar, it's sort of in the same vein as Northern Song, with these blasting keyboards and just great Ringo drums. And everything's a little bit off, kind of the same way with Only a Northern Song, with these claps and choo, choo sounds. And then maybe my favorite... Sorry, my dog Toby is about to jump up and break my mug. Oh yeah, you can get by my mug too, if you want. Toby, I'm talking about the Beatles, bud. I have a dog. I'm talking to a dog, by the way, not to my invisible friend. Out. Out. And also, if you like this video, you can smash the like button, subscribe. You can also say AVAA, which means awesome video as always, and I always give a heart to that. Anyways, some of my favorite George lyrics. It's all too much for me to take the love that's shining all around here. So I'm a cheesy guy. I'm an emotional guy, and there are times in my life I'm lucky enough to say that this really resonates with me. There are times. Like, let's say we go to an award ceremony for one of my teenagers, you know, winning an award for something at school and driving home and getting ice cream and sitting there and feeling that sense of success and then having my other kid there supporting their sibling and then having the baby, my fresh new baby, sitting up there looking and trying to keep things together, coming home and the dogs jump on us, and just feeling like this love between me and my family and my dogs and the people and my community and the world. It's all too much, you know? It's a real, sincere, Only Northern Song is this kind of bitter, weird meta take on the nature of songwriting, and here we have this song where it's all too much. All the world is a birthday cake, so take a piece and not too much. The cheesiest line. Okay, super cheesy. Also, good lyric. Strong lyric. Love it. All the world's a birthday cake? Love it. You know why I love it? Because George Harrison could not stop eating candy. Okay? Could not stop eating candy and sweets. Thin guy. Hey, exercise. Maybe other dietary supplements in the 70s. But in general, exercise, living well, gardening, all that, ate a lot of sweets, you know? But all the world's a birthday cake, so take a piece but not too much. The feeling of restraint, the feeling of sharing, all those things. Like, this is, to me, the best of hippie mentality. And then it ends with All You Need Is Love, which is a perfect ending, which I already know it's on Magical Mystery Tour. You know, they didn't really know where to put this song because it was supposed to be a global phenomena, and it was supposed to... Because Magical Mystery Tour is kind of put here, is kind of put there, but this is the perfect place because this is the song that defeats the Blue Meanies fundamentally. So, with all that said, I'm not going to go into great detail as to why I love the movie so much. A lot of it is nostalgic because I used to watch it as a kid. It was the first movie I ever saw. My parents took me to a drive-in to see this movie. But it does so many things that, like, I'm pretty obsessed with taste and children. And I think, like, I had this whole theory that kids these days are going to be smarter than my era because they were watching SpongeBob. I truly believe that kids raised on SpongeBob are smarter than kids raised on G.I. Joe. Okay, so I was raised on G.I. Joe and Transformers, Mattel, Mars Bar, Chocobot Hour, just buy, guns, this. The psychedelic, comedic, underground freakout of SpongeBob, I think, is going to make kids smarter. It might not give them taste, but a movie like Yellow Submarine is an introduction to the Beatles music. It's an introduction to a certain aesthetic, the kind of psychedelic aesthetic. But it's also just, there's a looseness to the way that it's written, to the humor. There's a looseness to the way it's produced. And I strongly suggest, if you have kids, make sure they watch this. You know, you show them Encanto. That's great. All that stuff is great. But like you want good taste? I don't think you can do much better than Yellow Submarine. You'll see behind me, I have a Yellow Submarine cell of Ringo with the School of Wales. They look a little bit old for Wales. University of Wales. That was a gift to me from my father. So my father was at the Apple Store with my mother in the 60s. Not the Apple Store like Steve Jobs, like Apple Store, like the real Apple, Beatles. And when they were closing down, they were just like selling the Beatles cells for like $30 a piece or $20 a piece. And my dad bought a bunch of them. And he gave some of them to me before he died. And I inherited some after, so I was going to share those with you as well. Here's my George. Now, what's cool is that they didn't actually group them together on purpose. They just threw them together. So this is like a puff of smoke. I assume it's from the Yellow Submarine, but there's George. I think he's about to say, "Let me peruse it with me finger." One of my favorite moments where he's checking the engine. So that's pretty cool. This is a pretty nice one of, this is John trying on the Sgt. Pepper's outfit. And there's a glove trying to chew up the word nothing. And then this one's sort of another sentimental favorite. Because look, it's all together now. It's John and Paul with the Yellow Submarine. So there you go. I had these up in my house. So there you go. Was that fun for you? No, that was fun for me. Can you please tell me that you promised to listen to this album in its entirety? Not to be like middle school Skye and skip the George Martin part? All right. Until next time, for Ringo and Jeremy, Hillary, Boob, Fud. There's the camera.